Hello everyone and welcome back to another WARNO tier list. As today we're gonna go back into tanks. We made one of these last year, but since then we first of all got a lot of new tanks added, and then a lot of them that we talked about last year had been rebalanced since, so thought it's a good time to jump back in here and talk about main battle tanks once more, as the refresh of that tier list is needed. So let's get into the action here, and we're gonna start with the French here, as they have a decent family here of vehicles as well. A couple new ones, including the first one here, which is the AML 90. And that thing is really fast. It is going 100 kilometers road speed, 90 kilometers off-road speed, so that is really great. But its main cannon is really terrible. It only has 1,925 meter range. It only has 40% accuracy and can't basically really hit anything when it's moving. And then it has 14 damage and they're only heat. So they don't get any better when you move closer to the enemy. And 14 damage doesn't one-shot anything with significant armor. Like 2 armor and above, you don't one-shot with this thing. So that's an issue. And that really leaves the AML 90 hanging. It can't one-shot IFVs even with side shots and so on. So that's a problem. And that's why I would put the AML 90 into C tier. 152nd. You need these things. You use them. And they are decent fire support, but not better than an autocannon. And they don't even have much more range than an autocannon either. And the rate of fire of 8 is not even that great for a small caliber gun as well, as this space in this thing is pretty cramped and so on, so even a 90mm cannon is not that easy to operate, so 8 rounds per minute. It doesn't have a heavy MG and so on. It has smoke, that is pretty helpful to get closer and to get out after you shot an enemy and they started seeing you. Mediocre stealth helping out as well, but not as much as on its brethren, that we will come to in a second, because you have to get closer to the enemy, so chances that the enemy spots you is higher as well. And yeah, that leaves this thing a bit hanging here. And its brethren, the ARC 90 Sagai, that thing has a lot more range, has 15 pen at max range, and has the normal scaling there, as it has kinetic rounds. The ARC Sagai, 100 points, better accuracy as well, even on long range, better rate of fire with 9, which both play a big role. And it even has 2 frontal armor, so yeah, it's just a massive upgrade. It pays a good bit extra, but the ability to snipe from long range, I think, keeps this thing in B tier. It's still pretty expensive, and anything that gets into a gun duel with it most likely will win out in the long run, but the chances of ambushing things, the chances of, if you get a bit closer, one-shotting things, especially with side shots and so on, that makes the Sagai pretty interesting. Setting up a full fleet of these for 100 points is still not easy, and 100 points is still a lot, and you mostly only get repaid in mobility, which is fantastic. The 100 kilometers road, 85 kilometers off-road speed is great. But they also only have 8 hit points, so that doesn't help them either in survivability, even with the extra frontal armor of 2. So yeah, in the end, these guys suffer a bit when it comes to actually getting into duels, and they're really only good as a sneak unit. They are pretty good at that, so that's why I would put them here in B, but it will be lower B tier whilst we go through this. And then we come to the AMX 1390. And when we last looked at this thing was 60 points, and it was wholly unusable at that point. It has a similarly performing gun to the AML-90, but it has an autoloader for it, and that means it has 12 rounds per minute. And that's a big bonus. It has 50% more rate of fire than the AML-90. It is cheaper, so that is quite nice. It has 10 hit points and 3 frontal armor, meaning that it survives a decent bit of stuff. Only issue is it's a lot slower, it doesn't have the stealth. So this one is actually a frontline fighter. It is pretty good as fire support with its high rate of fire as well, so that is quite nice. It can be a good bit more helpful in infantry fights. I would say it's a C tier unit nowadays as well. Like, it's not a unit that you feel great to play, and both Berlin and 152nd don't feel great right now, and yeah, not having the greatest tanks is a reason for that. But it is functional. So AMX 1390 here, going into C tier, does a decent job there. And then we come to the first of the AMX 30, and that's the special one. That's the EBG. And the EBG is one of the tanks that has a high explosive round and is not having any AP. So this one is just for pure fire support. It's an infantry support vehicle. Unlike its brethren though, it has it with a really short range. Only 850 meter range. And they got buffed in that they ignore armor, building cover bonuses and bonuses that brings when it comes to hitting something in the building. So all of these units were supposed to be good at clearing out ATGMs out of buildings and so on. And the others are now. But this one isn't because it still has to get so close. It has smoke, which is nice. And it's decently fast, which is nice as well. But having to get so close to the enemy, I still don't think is getting this thing anywhere. It can be decent in forest fights, but it's not amazing there. It doesn't have 50 colors so to keep it consistently firing. And its rate of fire of 6 is not great either. So yeah, near and MX30 EBG, 50 points. I think a normal IFV does better because the normal IFV also can shred through the enemy's light vehicles and so on. And this one cannot. And has better range as well. So MX30 EBG, I don't think it's worth it for 50 points here. So this one goes down there. And then MX30B. And this one is interesting, as it has the extra autocannon of all the MX30, which is really great. It has decent mobility, though only 55 kilometers off-road speed, which is not the most amazing, but it is decent. But its main gun, the 105mm, fires heat rounds, and it only has 15 pen on max range. And the thing with the MX30B is that the autocannon wants that you get closer, but you don't get any better penetration. So if the enemy then comes around with tanks in close ranges, you usually lose the fight because they get more penetration and you don't. You don't get anything out of getting closer. So this thing is in a bit of a split position always. It is still pretty cheap, and it is quite nice even as just a support vehicle against infantry and killing off enemy IFVs in closer range engagements. But it is not really great as an all-rounder tank against other tanks and so on. So that always keeps the MX30 hanging a bit. I would still put it into low B tier. But yeah, it's slightly better than the Sagai because it is a good bit cheaper and it has the autocannon. It's a way better fire support unit and it's still decently agile, but it's not amazing. On the other hand, though, it's MX30B2, brethren. That one is amazing. First of all, it got a massive motor upgrade, and second, it has a 17 pen gun with full range. 17 pen on 2,275 meters. And that is a good penetration, even on the longest ranges, means that you can deal damage to a lot of things. And if you get a bit closer, one-shot IFVs and APCs. And the 9 frontal armor of these tanks is still an issue. You get one-shotted by TOW2s and Milans and so on. Everything with 23 and higher penetration one-shots the MX30s. But this one has the smoke and the agility to usually move around that, to close in the gap as well. And with it getting higher pen on short ranges, it can also brawl nicely there with its high penetration gun if you get the flank onto the enemy, which you can get with this. So that then the 20mm on top of that also comes in really nicely. As the 20mm on all the MX30s is really nice. That's what keeps the MX30B in B tier here as well. And the MX30B2, it's just really cost efficient for its price point still. And the high penetration of the main gun combined with the autocannon just makes this an absolute beast, and the high mobility on these things is amazing. And it's even better, brother. The MX30B2 Brennus is our first S tier tank currently. The 19 pen, 1 extra frontal armor, and also 1 extra hit point thanks to the Era armor, plus the Desolate rate, which isn't the most impactful one, but having slightly lower chance of being hit by an ATGM is quite nice. And yeah, it survives Milan 2s and so on. That is really great. And then the 19 pen on the gun is a really impactful thing as well. This thing can hurt even the heaviest of tanks. And that makes the Brennus so impactful for 5th Blinde, because that gives you the chance of, in the early game, having something to brawl with enemy heavy tanks and get some kills there and push through before they can get enough of them onto the battlefield. And it's only costing you 10 points more. Like, that's just 10 points more for better pen, better hit points, better frontal armor, and the Desolate rate. And that's just a steal. Like, that should be 15, maybe even 20 points. So the Brennus really gets away with it here. And that's based on a really good tank already. The B2 put into A here. The Brennus, our first S tier tank. It is really fantastic. So yeah, that gets us to the next nation, which are the British. And here we start with the Centurion family, which got 2 additions lately with 4th Armored. And the first one is the Centurion Mark 12 AVRE 105. And this one is interesting. It has a 105mm gun. It is not the most amazing when it comes to penetration, but it has decent range and accuracy for being on such a cheap tank. It has 9 rate of fire as well, 2 MGs. The Centurion is the slowest of the tanks. It's only going 35 kilometers off-road speed, and that is obviously not fantastic. But it has smoke on a 55-point tank, and that has to account for something. And as it has way better frontal armor than the MX-30 1390, and it has a really solid HE round in the 105mm gun as well, I would put this above the AVRE. Both have smoke. The AVRE is the MX-13 is a bit more mobile, but the Centurion Mark 12 AVRE is a bit more flexible when it comes to moving around, as it has better frontal armor. And the better frontal armor means just not getting one-shot here. So yeah, Centurion Mark 12 AVRE can be quite nice in the spam as well. Having a couple of these with your chieftains around in that division can be pretty nice. Next come 2 tanks that are pretty similar. The Centurion Mark 5 AVRE and the Centurion Mark 5 AVRE Romor. And the Romor has just extra protection with era armor, so it has an extra hit point and 1 extra side armor for some reason, as it has those extra packages on the side. But in general, it is not really worth 10 points there. So the normal one, I think, is slightly better. Both of them have a long range, 1750 meter range, so decent long range HE gun that can one-shot everything with 3 hit points no matter where they are. So you can one-shot all ATGM teams with this main gun, and that is pretty impactful. Being able to do that is really nice. In the end, though, you still compete with IVs as fire support. You still cost a tank slot that can't kill other tanks, and they are still slow. The Centurions are still really slow. I still think they are pretty important, and yeah, being able to one-shot stuff is nice. As I said, the Romor paying a bit too much for the extra 1 hit point. It should be 5 points instead, I think. But in general, these they can be nice fire support, and the smoke really helps getting them there. And yeah, helping out getting to kill on an ATGM team and helping out infantry fights a lot with these can be quite nice. They are not mind-boggling though. So yeah, those are the Centurions. Next, we come to the first heavy tonks that we will get through in this, and those are the Challengers. And we start with a tank that had struggled a lot in the past, but I think it's finally at a price point where it is really in a sweet spot. That's the Challenger Mark II. Challenger Mark II is 220 points nowadays, and that's really a pretty cost-efficient spot to be, especially considering its frontal armor. It has 18 frontal armor. It can't get one-shotted by anything. and especially not by planes, where the threshold is 16 with the 30 ATGM missiles. That is really helpful. It also has a decent penetration gun. 18 is quite nice. The Brandis has a better penetration gun, but this thing also has really good accuracy on it. The rate of fire is still not great on the Challenger. It is only 8, which is the lowest of any of these kind of tanks. It doesn't have any extra big number of MGs. It only has one 7mm, so no 50 cal for fire support. So the anti-infantry is still a bit limited. And then another thing that is somewhat limited as well is the speed. It's the slowest of the modern MBTs as well. It only goes 50 kilometers off-road speed. So it struggles to dodge clusters a bit, and it can't hunt down other tanks easily. But that's all priced in by now with the good penetration and frontal armor combination. It also has good availability curve nowadays. So all that makes the Challenger Mark II a pretty solid tank. I don't think it's the most amazing, but it is a really good tank. That's why it's ending up here in A tier. Lower end of A tier, but A tier. And I think the Challenger Mark III can go next to it, because that one pays 40 points for 1 extra hit point and then 2 extra damage on the main gun. And those 2 extra damage from 18 to 20 make a lot of difference, because that means that you can hurt basically everything in the game, and you can start to one-shot a good amount of things here quite easily as well. All the other sets are the same, rate of fire and so on. So yeah, accuracy doesn't change between these, but the 1 extra hit point can be quite handy as well with 18 frontal armor, so that you survive a bit more things. And in the end, I think the 40 point price difference here is somewhat justified. So yeah, they are both low and A tier. There will be some units between, but they are A tier now. That is a massive jump up from where they had been in the past. So Challenger is really working for both the first UK and second UK in a decent job now. And that brings us to the Chieftain family, where we start with the Chieftain Mark 6 II. And this one is an interesting tank. It has really solid frontal armor for being a 100 point tank. 12 frontal armor. It has smoke, which is not a given in that price range either. It's a Chieftain though, so its mobility is somewhat limited. And this one having a pretty bad rounds. It's only 1925 meter main gun range. It is armor penetrating, but that's only 14 if you look at it on the full range. So that's not great. It's not terrible either for its price point, but it means that you really have to get into fights with stuff. So yeah, there are 2 range steps there. So if you reduce it, it would be 14 and 2,275 meter range. That's where I want it to be. And again, the accuracy is pretty good though. 60 is quite high. The rate of fire is the biggest weakness of the Chieftains though. All of them only have 7 rate of fire, and this one will get hit, and then it will go lower. So you still want to use these as jumping onto an enemy, fire 1 or 2 shots, and then smoke off and disengage. And that's fine. With the 12 frontal armor, can do that in the forest, pushing infantry and so on as well. The Chieftains at least have 2 MGs compared to the Challengers. In the end though, I would put this one into low B tier. It is pretty cheap for the platform of frontal armor and firepower. And yeah, the good accuracy on the main gun means that if you get the first shot off, you don't get shot by the enemy first, you will get hit solidly there, and that can do something. Then Chieftain Mark 9 has the same frontal armor, has the same smoke, same mobility, same rate of fire. It has a bit better gun. It has 18 penetration on max range. It only can shoot 2100, so there it is 19. And it has slightly better accuracy range scaling as well with 60%, but not by a lot. And that extra 4 penetration for 40 points, yeah, you could argue, but I think it's slightly weaker than the Chieftain Mark 6 too. as in general, it can't quite fire long range. Like the 2100 meter range is not the most important step. Like the difference between it and the full range is way bigger than the difference between it, the 1925 meter and the 2100 meter range step, because it means that you can't just fully enjoy the full range. So you have to get closer some way or the other, and then the difference is not that much to the 1925 meter ones. So really, it mostly pays for a bit of extra range, which would be 10 points, and then the other thing would be 20 points maybe. So it's, in my eyes, slightly less efficient than the Chieftain Mark 6, which sits here on the low end of B tier. I would put the Chieftain Mark 9 on the high end of C tier. And then we have the Chieftain Mark 10 and 11, which stats-wise in the game currently are identical, so we will treat them as that. And they get a good bit extra. First of all, they keep the same penetration, but they go to max range. So they have 18 at 2275 meter range, which is a really impactful jump. And then they also go to 15 frontal armor. It's not the perfect number of frontal armor, because that still means that they're vulnerable to enemy shots from ATGM planes, but they survive everything else decently. That's also for the Chieftains, they survive TOW 2s. That's a pretty impactful thing for a 100 point tank, that you can survive a TOW 2 and every other ground launched ATGM. But yeah, the Chieftain Mark 10 survived a good bit better, especially also against guns. And the being able to fire long range is really impactful with a good shell like that. Like, they have the same penetration power as the Challenger Mark II. They have the same accuracy. The only thing they get less of is 1 rate of fire per minute. So in that regard, they're quite up there. But the Challenger gets the 3 extra frontal armor and the faster speed and so on. So these guys are not as good as the Challenger Mark II. The 40 points, for 40 points, the Challenger Mark II gets a decent a bit extra, like 3 frontal armor, getting it to an important 18 point threshold above the 17 point gap, and the better mobility and the extra rate of fire. Like, all of that play a role, and I would say this thing is going in here. It's in front of the ERC, but it's still B tier. Like, these tanks are fine. I'm not unhappy with Chieftains nowadays, but I'm not feeling like they're the most amazing things. And if you have a look here, this Chieftain family together, like, that's what 4th Armored, for example, is right now. So that's why 4th Armored is not a top deck div, because its tanks are mediocre. Okay, but mediocre, and that's, as an armored deck, is not great if you don't get any really good tanks. Then we come to the last thing that is in the tank tab as an MBT. It's not really an MBT, but it's not really an IFV either, because it can't carry infantry. And that is the FV432 Raden. And that nowadays is not quite D tier anymore, because it got a bit cheaper. It has the good Raden autocannon, and it is 35 points. And I would say that gets us in here somewhere. Like, it's in the AMX-13 fight for a similar spot in Berlin Command, and the Raden might have the upper hand nowadays, as it is good fire support. It has the smoke. It's not really fast or anything though, so yeah, it has a bit less range than the AMX-13, but at least decent 1050 meter range, and being 15 points cheaper in that area is also quite impactful. Yeah, the 1 frontal armor and 1 side armor are the thing here that keeps it still being pretty bad against other IVs unless it gets the jumps. But if it gets the jump, the Raden can shred all of those, so that's the key thing, and it is just as good as a warrior in giving fire support against other infantry, so that makes this thing quite decent. And it's not as overpriced as it had been in the past. It's still not great though. As for the same price, you can get a BMP1 with an ATGM and smoke as an IFV and so on. So there are some differences there, and it's not quite up there. And then we come to the Leopard, starting with the Leopard 1A1A1. And that one is still a really, really nice tank. And I would put that one into A tier, behind the Brennis, but it is a really good tank, and it's up there on the top in A tier, as it has a good penetration gun. 15 at max range, and 17 at the range where it can fire at 1925 meter. It is a pretty mobile tank, and yeah, it has the 9 frontal armor. So yeah, the difference to the AMX-30B is that it actually can do these brawls, because with the kinetic power, it gets pretty good penetration there in the shorter ranges. It has a decent accuracy with 55% as well, and it has a stabilizer. It's not the most amazing stabilizer, but it has one, and that really makes this a nice fighting tank. It is not the fastest of all things, like the MX-30s are still faster and so on. The B2s at least, and the Leo 2s will be faster as well. But it is decently agile. 55 off-road speed, like, yeah, that works out quite nicely. And as I said, its capability of dealing with IFVs, of dealing with enemy tanks when they can get side shots and so on, where it can get quite nasty for 85 points. That is pretty nice on a tank that has smoke, which is really important for these kind of tanks as well, that they can dodge IFVs, ATGMs coming at them, and play a bit around that, play a bit around in the smoke, move forward, shoot, move backwards into the smoke again when the IFV is trying to shoot at it, move forward, shoot again, and so on. Like, all of this plays a big role for such a cheap tank. The utility in this is really solid, and that's why I think, because of its really good cost efficiency and the capability of trading up so nicely, the Leo 1A1 here is an A tier. And then we come to the Leo 1A5, and that one has 16 pen at max range. It can fire at max range. It also has a better fire control system, so it has 65% accuracy at max range. And those are nice things. The rate of fire on the Leo is also quite nice, similar to the MX-30s. It can fire at 9 rounds per minute, the thing that most NATO tanks have, and it gets better with veterancy. So that is nice. But the Leo 1A5, it pays a hefty impact there for the 1 extra pen that gets on the gun and the extra range and stuff. We talked about earlier that the range can be worthwhile. This one is supposed to be a sniper. It doesn't quite have the penetration to be a sniper though. 16 at max range is not quite where you can just kill off stuff. And the Leo 1A1, that's a brawler, and when it gets close enough, it gets the penetration by getting closer. The Leo 1A5, you don't want to push closer though, because you pay for that extra range. You want to shoot from long ranges. So it doesn't really get anything out of brawling, because that's not what it pays for in price, and it's 35 points difference, and that's just a bit too much for what it does here. So I would actually put it behind the Chieftains, because it can't do that sniper role that it is supposed to do, and that leaves it a bit hanging. And you usually don't use it all that much in these decks, as the Leo 1A1s and the Leo 2s that you get in the decks that come with it are in most roles just better. The Leo 1A5 still can be nice to control open fields in the early game, and a gang of them against a deck that doesn't have heavy tanks can still be devastating. If you come up against only IVs and so on, having a really high accuracy long range gun is pretty impactful. It's just the penetration really leaves it hanging when you come up against T-72s and stuff like that. And yeah, you pay for the extra range and then not being able to engage, that hurts a bit. And we come to the Belgian Leos, and they are a bit different. The Leo 1A5 BE, for example, gets 1 less frontal armor, but it has 1 more pen. And that 1 more pen actually makes it better than the German one. Consider if that's enough above to get above the Chieftain. I would even say so. It's like the jump from 16 to 17 is pretty impactful. And it's supposed to be a long range shot, so the 1 less frontal armor, you aren't supposed to be hit at that range anyway with these. So I would say the 1A5B is a bit better than the normal 1A5. And then we have the Leopard 1BE. And that one can fire at max range as well. It costs 10 points less. And it has the same penetration as the Leo 1A5. Issue with it is it also has a bit less accuracy. But 10 points for 10% accuracy, that's about fair, and I would still say it's a slight bit better. I would even put this one at the forefront of B tier, above the MX-30. This one is still really cheap as a with its autocannon and so on, so it's hard to beat. Actually, let's leave the MX-30B there. And yeah, the Leo 1BE, I would say slightly better than the Leo 1A5. The trade-off there is quite nice, but the 1A5BE, that one is really solid. Then we come to the Leopard 1NL, and that one is just the stats clone of the 1A1A1. So 15 pen on max range, but it can't quite fire there, so 17 on 1925, and all of that. It's just a stats clone, really, so they both go into A tier. And that brings us to its follow-up, the Leopard 2s. And we start there with the Leopard 2A3. And that one got cheaper lately. It was not that cost efficient before because it only has 16 frontal armor. And 16 frontal armor means it still gets one shot by all the plain ATGMs. And also it can get hurt by a lot of the medium AT guns as well at max range, like the Leo 185, for example, can do damage and can actually shoot at it at max range and so on. And that's all not quite great. And on the other side, though, it has a great main gun. The 120mm with 20 pen, that does do damage. Like, that's the same damage that the Challenger Mark III can do. It has the same accuracy and it has a better rate of fire. So it has more damage output than the Challenger Mark III that costs you 30 points more. And it is way faster. It goes 70 kilometers of road speed and 80 kilometers on road, so it's actually also faster than most other tanks. MX-30B2s and a couple of other exceptions that we will get to later on that are similar. But that high speed of tanks, that is really key for the Leos, as they can also use it with the stabilizer. The stabilizer only has it having a 5% reduction, so the 20 pen 16 frontal armor is still a good package, and I would put it nowadays. Yeah, I would put it in here. The extra frontal armor and the extra hit point here on the Challenger Mark III are still really solid, but yeah, the Leo 2A3, yeah, having less frontal armor than the Challenger Mark II, but having a better gun and the extra mobility. Has lower side armor as well, can get one-shotted there quite easily, but yeah, if you keep it mobile, if you micro it well, this thing is pretty decent. Like, even on high level, those side shots can happen sometimes with the Conkers and so on, and then just being outright wiped out is pretty bad. Like, all 20 damage ATGMs can one-shot that, and that can be quite dangerous. And then we come to the Leo 2A4B. And that one gets one extra pen and one extra jump of accuracy over the Leo 2A3. And the jump from 20 to 21 pen is pretty hefty as well. It's pretty impactful, as it means that you can damage all the heavy tanks there that are out there at max range and so on. But it pays 20 points for that. And I think that's not quite well, as it still has the 16 frontal armor of the Leo 2A3. And that means it still gets one shots. And that for 250 point tank is not great. But it's still a super fast, super hard hitting weapon. So it's a really big class cannon. And that's the issue there. The extra accuracy is nice, the extra pen is nice, but it would be more like 15, 10 or 10 points at this price range. So it's slightly weaker, and I would say it's slightly weaker than the current Challenger Mark II as well. Putting the Leo 2A4 here, 2A4B into high A tier. And then we come to the Leopard 2A4C. That pays another 25 points, goes up to 275 points. It has the same gun and penetration as the 2A4B, but it adds that with 2 frontal armor. And those 2 frontal armor are so impactful, because that means you don't get one-shotted by enemy planes with ATGMs. You take a lot less damage on tank duels as well. And that combined with this super fast tank is just insane. And the Leopard 2A4C is an absolute god mode. The stabilizer only losing 5% there, being able to fire with 60% accuracy on the move is also really nice. Like, this thing is just such a list to micro, because it can just roam around, shoot. You can turn it around a bit with moving it backwards to keep the frontal armor where you want it to be, and it still can shoot and take good engagements. You don't have to worry too much about it. And yeah, the 21 damage, 18 frontal armor combination is just really, really strong. Like, if you compare it to the Challenger Mark III, which already is pretty good, this thing gets 1 extra pen, it gets way better speed, it gets an extra shot per minute, and it gets better accuracy. And the only thing it loses there is 1 extra hit point that the Challenger Mark III gets, and that's an absolute steal for 15 points. So the 2A4C, a really, really good tank right now. Like, this thing is just an absolute beast, and one of the reasons why both 5th Panzer and the 4th Dutch currently are so strong, because it can bring around that beast. You don't have to play it all the time, but the threat of it coming around means that the enemy has to set up something, and if you micro your Leos right, they just won't die, and you can hunt down enemy tanks. If the enemy does a slight misstep, then you can just start hunting them down. But you can always disengage because you are faster than all other tanks, and that on a tank that has such good penetration and such good base stats is really, really scary. So yeah, that's it with the German tank production lines. That gets us to the tanks produced in the United States. And there we start with the National Guard's M1 Abrams. And that one has been buffed slightly lately. It is an interesting spot yet now. It is a fast tank as well, and that is really nice. And the National Guard M1 Abrams has decent frontal armor as well. It has 16, still not quite above the gap, so it still gets one-shot by the plain ATGMs, which are a big risky factor in the game. But we actually would put this in high B tier here. Let's put it there. But it's a National Guard tank, so that is an issue. It has max range. It only has 17 pen there, which is not great. Means that you can't quite hurt the best tanks here. Challenger, Mark III, Leo 2A4, and so on. You can't quite fire at them at max range. And that's a problem for the 105mm of the Americans. That you can't quite hurt the best tanks out there. Against a lot of other tanks, it's pretty decent. Issue of the National Guard M1 Abrams is that it is a National Guard vehicle. And it only gets 10-point discounts for that. And that's not quite enough. Like, it should be a 15-20 point discount at this price range to really pay off for all the debuffs that the National Guard, the reservist trait, puts on you. Because that means you get more stress. That means you have a bit higher aim time, bit lower rate of fire, bit lower accuracy. And all of that adds on top, so that in the end performs way worse than the base deck looks. Unfortunately, Jin hasn't found a way of representing those debuffs directly in the stats. And like, on this base stats card, this thing looks pretty decent. In the end, I would say it actually plays out like a high C tier because of all the issues with coming from the reservist trade. And yeah, that keeps it a bit hanging. As it gets stressed out and slowed down quite quickly once being hit, and that is a big issue. Like, its top speed is supposed to be one of its key factors, and when you can't quite play them out, that's impactful. Like, actually, yeah, it still has decent frontal armor and so on, but it gets the one-shotted and just can't quite get the kills. So yeah, here C tier for the National Guard's M1. The normal M1 is a decent bit better, as it doesn't have that debuff, and yeah, that's the difference. So without the debuffs, I would say it goes above the Leopard ones. It still is a 200-point tank that can't quite damage the best tanks, and that's an issue. It can't really trade up, and yeah, you want to trade up here. Like, 17 pen on 2275 meter range for a 200-point tank, it's just not quite enough. If it would have 18 pen, it would be so much better. And it still gets one-shot by all the plain ATGMs, so it's not really having that for it either. And all of that for 200 points is not quite enough to get there. The fast speed is nice and all, and that's its major factor, that you can roam around the battlefield with it, but it can't hunt down things like the Leo 2A3 can. It can't just one-shot IFVs by getting a bit closer and so on. And that leaves the M1 hanging for 30 points difference. The Leo 2A3 still gets a good bit more thanks to the better penetration, like the 3 penetration here between these two guns. That's a pretty major factor. It gets a 50 cal, and it actually has a really good accuracy with 65 and 60 on the move. But yeah, I still would say B tier here. Actually, let's put it above the Chieftains, because yeah, the mobility and frontal armor is still quite nice. Yeah, then we come to the M1 IP. And the M1 IP has the issue that it still has the same gun that we just talked about. It's also slower because it is heavier. So it's not quite the hunter that we just talked about it to be. It has 18 frontal armor. And that is nice because it means it doesn't get one-shotted by those ATGMs, but the thing is, it still doesn't quite kill anything, and you can't have a 240 point vehicle that doesn't quite kill things. Like, it costs more than the Leo 2A3 and the Challanger. The Challanger has the same frontal armor, so it's just as survivable. But it has that one extra pen where it can start dealing damage to things on the long range, and it's 20 points cheaper than you are. Sure, you have that gun with great accuracy and rate of fire, but it can't quite damage the other tanks, and it can't quite start to get the kills. The 50 cal on it is nice as well, but it just costs a bit too much for that. And yeah, the 3 damage difference to a Leo 2A3, that is quite big as well. So in the end, M1 IP I would put into high C tier here as well. Yeah, it just doesn't quite do what you want your tanks to do on this level. If it would be 230 points, it would immediately go up to B tier here. Like, the differences here are pretty small here, but it is not quite there. And now we come to the M1A1, and that one in the past was an absolute powerhouse. It has the 20 pen gun, it has the great accuracy on it, it has the great rate of fire, and it has good frontal armor. Costs the same as the Leo 2A4C. What does it get above the Leo 2A4C for the same price? It gets a 50 cal, and it gets the better side armor. So it was 270 points in the past, and there it was really good. And I think it's still pretty good, and I still think it's an A tier tank. I would put it above the Leo 1A1s. It's not quite on the Leo 2A4C level though, because the extra pen on the Leo 2A4C and the extra speed make that one just a bit better to micro, and it's better against armored vehicles. And the M1A1 is better against soft targets with its 50 cal, and the side armor means that it is a bit more forgiving if you don't micro it and it gets side shot, but it still gets one shot by the best ATGMs and so on from the side, so it's not like that is a major difference. And with the higher speed, the Leo 2A4C is similar survivable thanks to the extra speed. That's a trade-off there that I would take. And being a bit better at its main role of it killing vehicles with that one extra pen makes the Leo 2A4C, like winning this straight duel, for example, against the M1A1, makes the Leo 2A4C just a bit better. But the M1A1 is still a great tank. The 18 frontal armor, meaning that it survives things. The great accuracy, meaning that it usually gets the first shot on target, and so on. Like, the M1A1 is still an A tier tank here, and a really good one at that. So M1A1 here going into high A tier. And then we have the M1A1HA. And this one is a powerhouse as well. It goes 65 and 75 kilometers, so it's still decently fast. And it is the heavy boy with 21 frontal armor. Plus, it also has 22 penetration on the gun, which is the highest in the game. So that is really interesting. It pays an extra premium on all of this though. 310 points. But it is just the best brawler in the game. It has a main gun that can one-shot a lot of things as well, that gets close to them. And its 21 frontal armor means that frontally, a lot of things just can't touch it, and things that can don't even deal much damage. So it is the best brawler tank in the game, but you have to get into that range, and you pay a lot of extra for it, and that means that it has a bit less support around it. Like the 35-point difference here is pretty impactful. I would still put it into S tier here, just at the lower end of it. Yes, the M1A1 HA Abrams is really still a solid tank there, and if you can get it into work, it is quite nice. It doesn't have more HE output than the M1A1. It doesn't have a bigger gun or anything, no extra MGs and so on, so no extra accuracy. So you don't get anything extra there, but you get better at being a tank and killing off other tanks, and that is a impactful stat for sure. And that gets us on to the next part of the American build tanks. Those are Germans though. Those are the M48s used by the TKS and 2nd Panzer Grenadier and 5th Panzer. And the M48 A2 is one of the few German vehicles with a 50 cal. It got a bit cheaper lately. I still don't think this is a good vehicle, as the resurrect rate holds it back a lot. It gets stressed out, and then it is pretty combat inefficient quite quickly. It only has 14 pen, 12 pen at max range, that is, at 1,925 meter range. It is kinetic, but yeah, you have to push it a lot closer to actually be able to deal some damage there. So the 90mm here, not amazing. You can't really deal with other tanks, and even against IVs, it is only semi-helpful. It has good rate of fire and good accuracy there, 55% accuracy when stationary, 10 rate of fire. That's all great. But the reservist rate takes it all down a notch as well. Like, this is just so impactful right now, and 40 km speed means that getting away, especially after being stressed out, is not that easy. So yeah, in the end, I think the tank is okay, but I don't think it's great. Like, the one thing it has is the 50 cal. Like, it is a decent close range fire support unit. And then for 5 points more, we have the M48 A2 GA2. It has the same range. It has a 105mm gun, which means it has 17 pen on its range, 15 pen on max range. So it's okay. It's still below the Leo 1A5. It's on par with the Leo 1A1, and it's 15 points cheaper. But yeah, you don't get the agility of the Leo 1A1, and all the other stats modifiers coming from the reservist trait take it down a good bit as well. Like, it has higher aim time, lower accuracy. All of that plays a big role. It has only one MG3. 10 frontal armor and so on are nice. But yeah, in the end, it's C tier here as well. Just the reservist trait hurting it a bit too much. As this is it with the M48s. Next tank family is an interesting one. M551 TTS Sheridan. And this is the airborne tank, and it's not really a tank. Its stats are a lot closer to actually being an IV. The thing is, it doesn't have an autocannon. It has a 452mm main gun, but it only has 3 frontal armor. It is pretty fast, 65 kilometers off-road, 75 kilometers on-road speed. And it has 10 hit points. It has the 10 hit points, so that can be helpful as well. But it has also an ATGM. It is a terrible ATGM though. The Shilela is just completely terrible. 40% accuracy, 16 pen. Can't one-shot an IV. But the main gun also has decent HE capabilities, as it is a 152mm. It has a low rate of fire though, and it only has 40mm of pen, so that's not really that great either. It costs you only 80 points, but for 80 points, you nearly get a Leo 1A1. And this thing is just a lot worse. Like, it has so much less frontal armor. Its main gun having a bit more range for fire support, and it having this weird ATGM doesn't quite compensate for the frontal armor and the lack of penetration. All of that, I would say, pulls this down quite a lot. it got cheaper. It was 100 points before, then it was absolute D tier. It's now 80 points, and at that point, I would say it goes in here. I still don't like the Sheridan all that much. Yeah, let's put it around here actually. Sheridan. Yeah, I'd rather have the M48 there, even with the reservist trade currently, than this. Then the M60 family comes around, starting with the M60A1 Rise. And this one is interesting. 17 pen on its range, 15 pen at max range, that would be. 12 frontal armor is really a nice thing to have. 490 points. Like, that's the same frontal armor as a Chieftain here. And it means that you don't get one-shotted by anything. It is a reservist tank, though. And yeah, it is pretty cheap, though. 19 for that range. It even has better penetration than the Chieftain. And a better rate of fire. So, yeah, all of that on paper looks better. It has a 50 cal, but yeah, it's same speed as well. 40 kilometers off-road speed. It is 10 points cheaper for the reservist trade. That's actually all quite fine. Like the Rise, it's a reservist tank, but it does that reservist tank thingy pretty decent. It's still decently survivable. It brings a 50 cal around, and it can kill tanks with its main gun if it can get the shot off. So yeah, in comparison to the M48, it gets the extra 2 frontal armor. That means that it doesn't get one-shotted and so on. Like, yeah, and it gets the 50 cal here as well, which is pretty big, giving it to be a fire support unit. So, yeah, M60A1 Rise here. Going in there. Then we have the M60A3 TTS. And that one has 15 pen at max range. 60% accuracy, but it pays 40 points difference here. 10 points for it not being a National Guards one, as we will have a National Guard one that's 10 points cheaper. But that's still 30 points difference here for nothing in pen power. Like the 15 pen at max range stays. It has better accuracy. It is still pretty slow. And this thing still wants to be a brawler. And it is not a brawler. It is still having less pens than the other snipers. It's supposed to be a long-range fire support sniper, but it is not quite great at that. The survivability of it is nice, but it costs you 10 points more than a Leo 185, whilst not being able to kill anything on that long range. And that's kind of a similar issue to the M1 IP here. And yeah, the extra survivability and all is helpful, but it just doesn't quite get the job done there. Like, the Chieftain Mark 9 has a better pen gun and so on. It has the same survivability there. Costs you 10 points more though, and doesn't have the max range and so on. So I still think that there is something to the A3, but it's just not quite there right now. The National Guard one, this one pays the correct amount of price difference here. 10 points I think is fine for this, but it's not great. And then you get the era trade on top of this, but it costs you 15 points. Like, this is a 10 points difference, and this thing gets era and a lot more on top of it. This one pays 15 points just for the era, and that is just not worth it. Like, the National Guard A3 TTS era is just not great. Like, it should pay 5 points, I would say, even. 10 points already would be a stretch here. Sure, on the MX-30 Brenners, it's too little, but here it is too much. So that gets us to the CEVs, the support units here, the combat engineering vehicles, and those are comparable to the Centurions. They have the same HE power. They have really low rate of fire though for the 165mm gun. They have good frontal armor with 12, but they don't have smoke. They're a bit faster, but they don't have smoke. They're also a bit cheaper for the National Guard one, which is nicely priced there. But in general, the lack of smoke is impactful. It has a 50 cal, so it has a bit more deep damage. But I think I like the smoke here, especially as it's still 5 points over the extra frontal armor and the 50 cal a bit more. Well, yeah, these guys stick around here now. So yeah, they are still doing a decent job as an IV replacement index that don't have anything like an IFV, but they're not amazing at it. So C tier, here it goes. And then we come to two more things that are not really tanks, but they are in the tank tab because they are also not IFVs really either. And the first one is the Scimitar. And that one is a Rarden vehicle with 3 frontal armor, and it has smoke. If you compare it to the FV432, it is also a lot faster. 70 kilometers off-road speed is pretty impactful as well, and the paying 10 points for 2 frontal armor already would be worthwhile. And without... so, yeah, it wins gun duels against other autocannon vehicles that are a bit weaker, like some Martyrs and so on the long ranges, and that is pretty impactful. And I think the Scimitar, this is a low B tier unit. Yeah, it's an autocannon vehicle that does exactly what you want to do from your autocannon vehicle, and that is fine. The Scorpion has a bit more range. It has a 10 damage heat round. Not really great at killing vehicles, but can damage them at least a bit, helping out there. And the long range of it means that you can use it as a fire support vehicle for the 35 points. And as a fire support vehicle, it's only slightly weaker than the 1925 meter range tanks, even, for way cheaper. Like, you can get 2 of them for the price of a Leo, and even more, and they do more than that as fire support. And the vehicle itself, outside of that, as I said, it's not great at killing enemy vehicles, but it can annoy them, and it outranges autocannons, so that can be handy as well. In the end, still, I don't think it's a great vehicle. I would put it into C tier here. I know a couple of people really enjoy this thing, and I think it can be really handy as a one thing that can shoot a bit further and so on, but I don't quite think it's amazing. And I know Static will be pissed in the comments as well, but as I said, I think the Scorpion is nice to have in the deck as an addition, but I don't think it's actually that great. And then one more vehicle like that we got here is our first Soviet vehicle, the first packed vehicle here that we got, and that one is the BMD-3. The BMD-3 has a fantastic ATGM on top of it though, and that's why it pays so much extra, because it's an ATGM vehicle plus an autocannon, and yeah, that is why it costs more than 10 points. It also has a bit more extra firepower with an AGS, but yeah, for something that is still pretty close to a Scimitar, and yeah, only trades equally with a Scimitar, like, yeah, paying more than double for that Conquer's 3M. Yeah, it's a nice combo, but it's still a 3 frontal armor vehicle that costs you 110 points, like that is similar to M60 there, whilst being a lot more vulnerable. So yeah, the extra killing power, the decent speed and so on, all of that help out, but in the end, I still would put it into C tier here. Like, this is not the unit that carries 76 completely. It does the job of being of some fire support and getting you some 80 gems, but 110 points is really pricey for it. And then the last of these light vehicles is the BT-76. And that one is comparable to the Scimitar. No, to the Scorpion, I mean. Yeah, basically has the same stats as the Scorpions. It has 10 frontal 10 hit points. It doesn't have smoke though, in the German variant here that comes around, and it has a reservist trait there as well. The Polish get it with Resolute. Yeah, they're both called BT-76s. That's why I didn't check that, but yeah, this one is just really terrible. The Polish one might be a slight bit better, but the BT-76s are not really doing it. As I said, the Polish one with Resolute it would be in C tier. This one here into D tier. And then we come to the Soviets with some heavy tanks. And this one is a Steel Division 2 heavy tank, the IS-2M. 40 points. It has a 15-pan gun for 40 points with 1,125 meter range. So that's 13 pen at max range. That is pretty fine. Like, we have seen way worse penetration guns for cheaper. 45% accuracy is not great though. This thing doesn't have smoke, and it is reservist. So actually it goes lower in accuracy. It goes lower in rate of fire, which is already only 5. And that means this thing wants to get a first shot off. But for 40 points, you also get 9 frontal armor. So the combination of also having a lot of MGs on top of this, 3 MGs, like the combination of AP, HE, and frontal armor here for 40 points is unbeatable. But the rate of fire, the speed, no smoke, the reservist, so that it gets stressed out and so on, all of that play against it as well. In the end, though, I still think the IS-2 is a solid B tier vehicle. It's just so cost efficient, and I would put it up here. It is really, really nice for its price point, and you just can human wave it, and it in a 1v1 fight against an IV, if you can get the first shot out, which you should, and then hit, you can do so much damage there. And if you get a couple of these around, they can just roll over enemy infantry and IVs quite easily, surviving some infantry hits as well. Yeah, just try to keep a military police unit close by so that they don't get stressed out all that fast, and be careful with if you move them over open fields, because they're so vulnerable and they don't have smoke. And in long run, drawn out gunfights, they obviously will lose because of the rate of fire as well. And then we have its other World War II brethren, the T-34-85, and that one has similar stats to the BT-76s, though instead of heat it fires penetration rounds. But it is 10 points cheaper, and it only has 8 hit points, but it has 6 frontal armor, so it means autocannons can't touch this thing. And that is quite nice. It is reservist trait as well. It is decently fast with 50 kilometers off-road speed. It has 2 MGs, so a bit of firepower there as well. But yeah, it's not quite the beast that we just saw with the IS-2, because it doesn't have the frontal armor to really get rid out of everything. And it doesn't have the penetration to kill off enemy IFVs easily on its own. But it can be a decent IFV replacement and can deal a bit of damage there in numbers as well. In the end, though, all of that is still not great, even after the price change. Yeah, the price change helped out. It has good availability per card and so on, but in the end, it still dies to a lot of things, and it doesn't have smoke, it doesn't have anything like that, so yeah, its agility, it's its only slight savior, but that is not great either, so in the end, it goes there. And then we come to T-54, and we start with the normal one, the AM here. This one is interesting. It is a heat round with 14 pen at its 1925 meter range, and it is a 100mm gun, which does decent AG damage. Rate of fire at 8 is pretty fine as well. It has a Dushka MG, so it has decent firepower there as well. And it has 11 frontal armor for 65 points, meaning that it doesn't die to a lot of things, including Milan 2 hits. And all of that for 65 points. Like, this thing is priced like an IFV. An IFV with an ATGM, it doesn't quite have that, but it gives similar fire support against infantry while it's being a lot more survivable. And that's an interesting trade-off. It was at 70 points before, it's now at 65 points. And that buff, I think, heaved it into B tier. And I would put it there. Like, this thing is quite solid. The Soviets have a version with reservist. And for 5 points, I think the reservist one is a good bit worse, being stressed out and then just being slowed down so much that it just can't move around, most likely. So yeah, T-64, 54B going into C tier here. And that brings us to one of the most well-known tanks around, the T-55A. And we have it in Polish, we have it in East Germans. East Germans have even having a slight buff there with Resolute. It's a 16 pen gun, 14 pen on max range. It's 80 points, and it has 8 rounds per minute now. It has bad accuracy, but it is an 11 frontal armor vehicle for 80 points that also has decent firepower with an extra good MG and so on. Speed is pretty okay as well, and you get good availability and so on. And all of this lately have pushed this thing, in my eyes, to low A tier. Oh, actually, no, let's put it high B tier. It doesn't have the smoke like the MX-30, but it has the better pen. It has the extra frontal armor that makes it immune to, or not immune, but survive ATGM hits. And yeah, the fire support of it is pretty decent as well. So T55A here, yeah, the decent A tier tank nowadays. The rate of fire buff and the slight price increase really helping out. 5 points for the reservist version, not quite what you want, so that goes around here. And then you have the Flammenpanzer TO55, which got a bit better availability lately, and that helped it out decent bit as well. It pays 5 points for the flamethrower instead of an MG, and that is not quite it because the flamethrowers are not that great, and you have to push pretty close to get them to use. So yeah, 5 points for that trade-off. Usually not quite worth it, but tier 55s here going into B tier. And then we come to another interesting modification, and that is the T55AS. And that one gets 2 rockets on top of it that are usually used for mine clearing, but also with a lot of explosives, so they can be used up to blow up enemy infantry. And that one is pretty interesting. It pays 30 points for that, but that is pretty fine, as that just has a really good reload time as well. It has a 60-second reload time, and in town fights, this thing can just be so devastating. Like, the enemy has to just move away from it. 2 of these can deal good damage to a vehicle as well, and so on, potentially blowing it up. It only has 1,750 meter range for it, but it's still a tank all around that. And if you set it up nicely, that can do a lot of work. So yeah, for 30 points, that is a nice upgrade. And then the T55A OBR 81. And this one is reservist as well, but it gets smoke and it gets extra range. It's still at the same max range penetration as the other ones. So it's 14 would be at max range. It is at 2100, so it's 15. It gets better accuracy though, and as the fire control is just better, and it gets smoke. And it only pays 15 points for smoke, better range, and better accuracy, and that smoke part especially means that you can micro it so much better. It still has the reservist trait though, so that doesn't really push it, that doesn't quite allow it to go higher, but I think it's better than the normal T55A. The smoke really helping out, and 2100 there is okay, but yeah, that goes around. And then we have the T55 AM1, which has the same range, but it also has an extra armor package, bringing it up to 14 frontal armor. You go up to 140 points, but on top of that, it also is a bit faster, 50 kilometers off-road speed, and it has a Bastion ATGM, 100mm ATGM missile with 18 pen and 2,800 meter range. And this is such an important ATGM. We will have it a couple times more. And yeah, being a 14-point ATGM carrier, a 14 frontal armor ATGM carrier is already really great. It has smoke, and that is really nice. And the gun on top of it just means that it can deal with soft targets as well. You don't really use it on armored targets. You use the ATGM for that, and that is such a good trade-off that it can be a decent fire support vehicle, but usually you want to keep it at long range. And for 140 points, the combo of being hard to kill but just being able to hurt everything is so nice. So the T55AM goes into A tier, and I would even put it up here, AM1. So yeah, AM1 right in there. Then we have the T55AM Merida, and that is a Polish tank that has max range, 2275, with the same pen still. It is still only 14 pen. It has good accuracy there though, but it is only main gun, so it pays 5 points, 15 points less than the one with the ATGM. And it has better range for that and better accuracy. That is all nice. And I think the 14 frontal armor being able to survive so much is really nice as well. Just not quite being able to kill anything is pretty frustrating though. But it is a better brawler than the Leo 185 because it has so much more frontal armor. So yeah, being too low on the pen there for being 5 higher on the frontal armor is a fair trade, as this is still a good brawler tank, and that makes the Merida go up onto the top of B tier here for me. We have the T55AM2, which is pretty comparable. It trades a bit of accuracy that the Merida gets for the Resolute trade. And yeah, I think that makes the Merida a bit better because it has the better first shot. But yeah, both pretty close in comparison. And then we have the T55AM2S Merida. And that one pays 35 points for the Coffin Launcher. But it doesn't quite want to push as close as the Coffin Launcher wants it to be. So I don't think it's quite as good as the other one, as the T55AS. Has the smoke and all, so it's not bad, but I think it's just slightly weaker going into B tier here. Then T55 AM2B, that's the German one with the gun launch ATGM. It pays 10 point extra because it has the max range fire control as well, but as I said before, you don't really want to use that. The ATGM is what you want to use, so paying 10 points extra for that accuracy is actually not quite worth it. And that's why I would say the T55s with ATGM is a bit better than this one. And we put that one into high A tier. We will put this one into low A tier. The long range ATGM capabilities are really nice. That finishes it for the T55s. The follow-ups coming up next, the T62s. And those have 15 pen and max range, but they drop to 6 rounds per minute. And that is a massive issue. Like, this tank just gets combat inefficient so quickly. It's not really fast either. It still has the 14 pen, frontal armor, which is a decent value for a cheaper tank, but it doesn't save you here. The 15 frontal armor, 15 pen, they're okay. But losing so much rate of fire versus the Meridas that are still cheaper, like for 1 extra pen there, but it's not being main range, max range either. Like, all of that leaves the M1, I think, as a pretty C tier level tank. And that's funny because its other brethrens, the T62M and MV, they are pretty okay because they have the ATGM again. So they pay 5 points more than the AM2B, but having less range on the main gun, but a bit more pen. And yeah, outside of that, they have that same ATGM, and they are a bit more expensive here. So I would put this behind the AM2B. And the MV pays slightly less, pays 5 points less than the, but has a lot less frontal armor. It has an error, so it has 1 more hit points, but frontal armor are an issue. But it's still a cheap ATGM carrier, and or cheap, decent frontal armor ATGM carrier combo, and that is what matters. So in the end, these go all into A tier here. And then we have one more of this cycle, and the MD is the same thing with 5 points for a bit extra side armor. That is even weaker, but still good because of the ATGM. And the one without the ATGM pays even extra here compared to its brethren. And I would say that allows it to go into C tier as well. I just can't quite see. Yeah, right. 5 points extra here. So this one goes down as well. Now to the other tanks of this era, the heavier ones, the T64s. And we start with the T64A. And the T64A OBR 83 is an interesting vehicle. It has 18 pens on max range for 150 points. It has 16 frontal armor, so it can get one-shotted, sure, but a lot of things don't kill it, like a lot of tank guns and so on. And it has 10 rounds per minute with autoloader. Like, this thing is kind of nuts. The speed is not amazing, but the frontal armor plus penetration for 150 points, this thing is amazing. It has smoke as well, so yeah, it's not like that is a major issue. And the 10 rounds per minute with a 20 pen gun, like, I would put this at high A tier. Doesn't quite have the flexibility of a Leo 2A4C or the Brennus, because it's not as fast and so on. And it doesn't have max range. But when it gets into brawling, like, there are no better brawlers. That's the thing here. Like the 10 rounds per minute, so it being able to survive enemy hits, so that can keep on shooting. 55% base accuracy is not terrible either. It's not great, but it's not terrible. And the 18 pen max range, 20 pen at its 1925 meter range is just scary. T64B1, that one pays a lot to get that max range. And it has better accuracy as well, especially with stacking. It has the max range. It has one more pen on max range with 19. But it has still 16 frontal armor. So it still gets one shot by the HGM, and it is not quite as agile as a Leo 2A3. It has the autoloader, and it has a good MG, but being a lot slower than a Leo 2A3 and having one less pen than it as well at those max ranges, in general, I would say puts this into B tier. I would put it in front of the Merida here. It's still a decent tank. It's not quite there though. And then you get the T64B. And that one pays 20 points for an ATGM. And that's a bad Cobra ATGM. 45% accuracy, 19 pen. The T64B, paying 20 points for it, that doesn't feel great. It goes around the M1 IP here. Has a better pen than an M1 IP, but less frontal armor, and it's not as agile. So yeah, the Cobra missile, it doesn't quite do the job, so paying 20 points for it, not really worth it. Then the B1V pays 10 points extra for one extra hit point. That's fine. That's fine. It's not really amazing, but it is fine. So I would put it slightly behind the B1. And then we have the BV. And that point pays 20 points for an ATGM as well. It's a lot better ATGM though. It's the Agona. Has better accuracy and has 21 pen. And that's actually important because that's better pen than your gun. So that one actually can really do good damage there over the long ranges. It doesn't have max range, it's not a fast ATGM, but it's a good hard-hitting ATGM. And that one, I would say, is worthwhile. So yeah, the BV here stays in B tier. The extra 2 pen and 10% extra accuracy here compared to the B are so impactful. Like the B should be 240 or maybe even 235 points, and then it might be interesting. And that brings us to the second to last tank family, the T72s. Number slowly going up. And here we start with an East German one, the just basic T72. And that one has 15 frontal armor and 19 pen, 18 pen at max range. So yeah, 1925 meter range. One less pen and one less frontal armor than the OBR that we just talked about. And it also doesn't have smoke. It's 55 kilometers off-road speed, that is nice, but the lack of smoke on a vehicle like that is pretty impactful. No smoke means that it can get hunted down by ATGM planes, it can't disengage out of bad engagements, and all of that really hurt it. And all of that, I think, put it into end of B tier, because the raw stats here of 8 rounds per minute, that's also lower than the OBR, but 19 pen on an autoloader, 15 frontal armor, like that combination is still great. I mean, we'll see it on other T72s that the base raw stats can be really, really great, but without the smoke, it's not quite doing it. T72M, the Polish one, that one doesn't have smoke either. It gets better range, so it is a bit better out of cover. It doesn't quite have to run into the enemy. Pays 15 points for that though, for one extra pen, as it has 18 against 17 on max range, as both have 19, but there's a range step between that. So one extra pen and extra range for 15 points, and without the smoke, as I said, this is a bit better. It's still not great, but solid. Like, as the raw stats here is still great, and that puts the T72M here slightly higher in B tier. And then we have the German T72M, which does have the smoke, pays 10 points for it, and that's all it gets for these 10 points, together with being resolute as German. But that smoke is so impactful, and that smoke allowing it to dodge enemy ATGM planes and so on, and allowing it to get closer by smoking off and then pushing a bit further or disengaging out of bad engagements is really, really key for a tank like that, and puts this one into higher B tier here. Like the raw power of it with the gun and the smoke is really nice. And then for 5 points more, you get 1 extra frontal armor in the MEV. And 1 extra frontal armor here, 18 pen on max range, potentially 19 on its range at 2100, 16 frontal armor. Like, that is just such a key factor for 5 points extra, that the MEV here, that one goes to 8 tier. That still gets one-shotted by the HGMs, so it does, from planes, with the 30 pen that all of those have, so it's not quite immune to that. You have smoke to play around that, though. And if you compare it to the T62 MD, like, it doesn't have the missile, sure, but the penetration, the rate of fire, the frontal armor are just such a big difference there. And that makes it really good. And then we come to the T72 M1. And this one is 175 points nowadays. There's a difference here. And that one gets another frontal armor over things. And as we just talked, that extra frontal armor is a key factor. So even it pays 15, like we just saw a 5-point jump for 1 extra frontal armor, here it's a 15 one, but it's such an important threshold because the M1 survives those ATGMs frontally, and it also means that some guns start to struggle shooting at you, like Leo 2s can't engage you at max range and so on. That this one pushes this tank even further up. So I would put it around here. T72 M1, a really, really fantastic tank. Maybe even put it up here. Yeah, 175 points, really solid. Vilk, that one is an interesting one as well, as it has the max range. It has 60% accuracy at that max range. And if you compare it to the Challanger, it's the same price as the Challanger. It has same accuracy on the main gun. Rate of fire is the same, but with autoloader. It has 1 less frontal armor, but it is more agile with 5 kmh. And it has a better MG on top. And it has an extra hit point. So the extra frontal armor versus the extra hit point. The extra frontal armor matters a bit more in this, but the extra hit point nearly evens it out. And it is a bit faster. And it has that extra MG on top. So in the end, I would say the Vilk goes ahead of the Challanger, as it is really good. And that brings us to the next and final T72, and that is the T72S. And this one has 18 frontal armor, has the era as well, so it is better than the Vilk and Challanger in that regard. It doesn't have the max range. It has 18 pen at max range potentially, but it only has 2100 meter range. Its fire control is the same as the M1, so yeah, it's the same stats there. But it has the 18 frontal armor plus era, so survivability is nice. And it has a severe ATGM, and the severe is 21 damage at 2800 meter range with 60% accuracy. And this is really key. That thing can damage everything with the ATGM. Even an M1A1 does take a bit of damage there, but it can deal significant damage to a lot of things. But still being a decent brawler with the 19 penetration gun, 18 frontal armor when it gets into gun range. And that makes this thing really nice. Like, it is, I would say, on par with the M1A1 here. It has similar frontal armor. It doesn't quite have the capabilities on 2275 meter range with the gun, but the ATGM, it's cheaper. Actually, I would put it above the M1A1 here. Like, this is a really nice tank as well. The severe ATGM is just going to be really annoying for a lot of enemies. And that brings us to the final ones, and those are the TADBs. And here we start with the TADB. And this one goes back down to 17 frontal armor. It is more expensive than the tank we just looked at, but it has a way worse ATGM. It has the Cobra ATGM. It has less frontal armor. What it does is a bit more mobility and better rate of fire on the main gun, and max range on the main gun. and 1 extra pen on the main gun. It's 19 at max range. So TDB, stats-wise, in that regard, still not terrible, but it is a bit expensive. Like, it has less pen than a Leo for 1 extra frontal armor, and it is slower, with similar rate of fire and accuracy. Being 20 points more expensive than a Leo there, that really hurts. And I would say it's around the... It's behind the Leo 2A4B here, because that one has 2 extra pen for 1 frontal armor, and it is faster. The Cobra ATGM is what you pay for, but that's just not quite worthwhile. 50 cal on it is fine. And then the C64BV, the TADBV. And that one pays 15 points for 1 extra hit point. Back in the day, it was 2 hit points. Then it was really, really nice. Now 15 points for 1 extra hit point. That is not worthwhile, actually. I would put it around here. So yeah, that is an issue. And then we come to the TADBV ICD. And this one, on the base stats, looks similar. It has a 17 frontal armor and 19 penetration gun at max range, 6% accuracy there. But it has the better Argona ATGM that we already saw in the T64BV. That is really impactful with 21 damage. It is not quite as severe, but it is pretty good. And it is a lot faster. And that speed advantage for a 19 pen unit is really nice. It's not quite a Leo 2 A3 that we just saw earlier, but it is a solid gun nonetheless, as it has less pen. But yeah, the ATGM is nice as well, so you can kite nicely with being an ATGM vehicle against tanks as well. It's just that 45 points for the ATGM here, and the slightly better frontal armor, being able to survive the planes. It's not quite where you want to be compared to those top end tanks. It's the same price as a Leo 2A4C, and the only thing that it gets above the Leo 2A4C is that ATGM, and that doesn't quite weigh up the 1 frontal armor difference and 2 pen difference and better accuracy on the Leo 2A4. So yeah, it's still a really solid tank though, and good bet better than its TADBV brother. Like the BV, actually, I would even put it lower here. Like, yeah, the B here, BV, somewhere, it's still in B tier. Like, it's not a terrible thing, but compared to the other modern MBTs, it's not carrying its divisions anymore. So it goes around there. And then we get to TADUs. And the first one is 310 points, 19 frontal armor. That is really solid. But it's still not quite enough to get around being hurt. It is 65 kilometers speed. It has a good ATGM. The reflex is a 21 pen, 60% accuracy. Like, it has the same stats as the severe missile that we just looked at. And the 21 pen on the main gun is amazing with its accuracy as well. The 2119 is just, it's 310 points. It's the same price as the M1A1HA. And it doesn't quite get the same, it only gets the ATGM over it. And you don't really want to be an ATGM beast. Like, too costly to just be an ATGM carrier at this point. So paying extra for that is not great. This tank is still solid. I would put it at high end of B, but the survivability is not quite there. And yeah, paying extra for the to compensate for the price. Like, it's still 19 frontal armor. It's still the 3rd best in the game, and it has 21 pen on the main gun, which is 2nd best as well. So all of that is great, but it's not quite 310 points. Great. And the TADUD just is better there as well. The availability is something that you have to keep in mind with these two as well, but the UD has the 21 frontal armor, so it is, once more, the best frontal armor in the game. It has 21 pen as well. It is a bit more expensive though, so yeah, it once more pays for that ATGM, which makes it super annoying to deal with for lighter divisions that can't hurt it with anything and have to try to kill it with ATGMs, because if you have good recon around it, the TADUD can just shoot ATGMs back and kill those things before they kill it. And yeah, the 21 damage means frontal armor means it can survive a lot of things and so on. And for 20 points, the jump from 19 to 21 frontal armor is fair. Like, at this point that every single frontal armor makes such a massive difference. Like, so many things just can't hurt this thing. Like, a lot of tanks, even on minimum range, don't do anything then. And that is so impactful for the TDUD. That's why I think it's still a really good A tier tank. It's 330 points, which is freaking expensive. And if you lose it to anything like a plain side shot, like an LGB bomber or so on, that can be painful. Like, all the LGB bombers outside of the strike area are cheaper than you, so even if they trade 1-to-1, that's fine because the availability of your tank is also 1. But yeah, the TDUD, if it fights on the ground, is still a really fantastic vehicle, and that's why it goes into A tier as well. And yeah, that's finishes the tier list. So we have some S tier tanks, we have a lot of high and good A tier tanks, and yeah, we have our fair share of C tier tanks as well. Let me know down below what you would put different and where you would put things. And see you all on the next time, guys. Bye bye, and thanks for watching.